Hi, this is Brandon from Talk Tech, back here again with another video. Today we're going to be continuing the KVM QEMU series. We're going to be covering networking in KVM and QEMU. So I wanted to go ahead and start off by talking about getting information about networks. So one of the things I can tell you is by default with KVM is it's going to create a default network for you, and that's going to be set, started, auto start, all that kind of good stuff. So the way that you can actually see information in regards to the networks that are available is you do versh, then you're going to do net, and then tac list. Now, just like many of the other commands, if you do it just like this, it's only going to list the active networks, but you can also just do a tac all, and it's going to go ahead and give you all of them. Right now, we only have the default network that's currently on the system, so that's why you're only seeing that one. Now, if you want to get information about that particular network, you can do a versh net info and then just do a default. And that's going to go ahead and give you just some of the basic information about it. A lot of stuff you can already see in the net list, but here it'll give you the actual bridge ID and the UUID as well will be available with this command. The next command is going to be the versh. And you know what? Actually, before I do this one, let me just do a versh start pepper. Let me go ahead and start that one. We're going to give it a second here to boot up before I actually go into the next command. And actually, you know what we'll do is we'll skip that command for now. What we'll do is we'll go on to the next one where we can actually see the XML file for the network. So what you'll do is you'll just do versh net dump XML default, and then you'll be able to go ahead and see the actual XML configuration file for that network. And keep in mind, you can always go to the file to go ahead and make adjustments to it. And that's primarily where you're going to do it regardless, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and run this other command. It's going to be versh net DHCP leases, and then we're going to do the name of the network. All right, so using the versh.net DHCP leases default, or whatever the network name is command, this is going to tell you information about the DHCP leased IP addresses that are gone to your virtual machines using that network. In this particular case, we can actually see here that we've got that our machine Peppermint, the host name right here, has the IP address of 192.168.122.16. It's got a MAC address here. It's got how long that lease is good for, and it's got the protocol as well as the client ID or DUID. So some pretty useful information. It's an easy way for you to get the IP address of that machine. So now let's go ahead and normally what I do is I've had a habit during the series of giving start, stop, auto start prior to kind of showing you how to create something. So we're going to go ahead and do this in a little bit different orders. We're actually going to go ahead and jump into creating a network. And then we will go ahead and after that, we'll talk about starting, stopping, and auto starting a network. So the network configuration files are in an XML format, just like pretty much every other configuration file when it comes to KVM. Now, the configuration files are going to be stored in etc, libvirt, QEMU, and then they're going to be in networks. All right, perfect. We can see that there. So let's go ahead and just do an ls. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to type in defaults. All right, and we can see that is indeed the correct one. And I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do an LSL. Perfect. And we can see all of that information there in regards to that file. Now let's go ahead and cat that file. Oops, let me put a space there. Oh, whoops. Oh, I just realized that I am just my regular user, so that's fine. All right, and we can see that that's the same information that we had up, similar to that information that we had up here. All right, so perfect. Okay, so that is where the configuration files and pretty much what the configuration files are. Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can do it with you could just do it with your text editor of choice. You could do vim and then the location of the actual configuration file, and you could just go ahead and jump in there and do it this way. Now, probably the better, more secure way to do that is going to be versh net edit and then default. Same thing. The only difference here is that you're doing it directly through the versh command. All right. So keep in mind, you always want to be careful when you're updating configuration files, just because anything that you put in here can throw off your configuration in many different ways. So make sure that you double check your work prior to actually saving the configuration file. So this is this is how you would edit that file. Now let's talk about actually creating the file. So what we would do is we would do the same thing. We would do vim, and then we would do, let's just call this test. We're actually going to do etc libvirt QEMU networks. And then we're going to do networks, and we're going to do, let's just call it test network dot XML. All right, so I've actually already got a configuration saved, and this is the format that you'll use. Oops. When completing these configuration files. So you can't, this is the base template for a configuration file. Once you actually define the network, which is creating the network, it'll add in more information. It'll add in the MAC address, the UUID, and the bridge name to the file for you, but you can add those in prior to doing that yourself, or you could just let it create it for you. I usually just let it create it for me, just because that's the easiest way to do it. So here we go. Let's just go ahead and make a couple of adjustments. We have this one just called another network. Let's just change that to test network. All right, test network, mode NAT. These are fine. Make sure this isn't the same IP address that you're already using. In our particular case, it's 192.168.125 compared to 122 is what the default network uses. So just be mindful of that. This right here is going to be your will be the default gateway for this particular range of IP addresses, and then here's the client range, and then here is our net mask, which just tells us that we're going to be using the first three octets, these three numbers right here, as the network ID, and then the last octet is going to be the client ID. So perfect, we've got all that here, and then you could change the port numbers as well if you want to, if you only want to use certain ports or anything like that. That's going to be solely up to your needs. So let's go ahead and just do a whoops. All right, and let's go ahead and save that. Whoops. What the heck's going on here? Give me just a second here. Let's fix this. I think I forgot to do it. Yeah, I'm just going to do a sudo. We're going to just go into, oh, whoops. All right, there we go. We're just going to go into root because I keep making this mistake. And what we'll do is we'll just do this right here. We'll just come up here and we're going to copy this. We're going to come over here. We're going to copy that. I'm going to paste that in here. All right, now we'll do a colon WQ exclamation point. Perfect. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to define the command define the network or create the network. You can use either word. So versh net define, and then we're going to do the location of this XML file. because it hasn't been created yet, so you'll have to put in the full absolute path. All right, perfect. All right, and we can see there it says network, another network, and I completely forgot to change the name of it, but that is perfectly fine. So as long as you're good with the name, it's fine. You know, keep in mind you do want consistency. So if this was a production environment, then what I would do is I would go back and actually change the name of the file. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna delete this after we're done here. So it's not something that really concerns me. So, all right, so let's go ahead and do a verse net list and then tac all. And we can see that we can see there we've got another network. All right, perfect. So that has been defined. And let's go ahead and let's just bring up the hmm, let's just do a verse net dump XML another network. There we go. So here we can actually see that once we dump the XML, it's got the UUID here, it's got the bridge name, and then it's also got the MAC address. So we can see here that it created everything for us without actually manually putting that stuff in. So that is fantastic. One of the things, though, I do want to let you know, because this is something that kind of tripped me up at first, because I was like, well, where does these bridges come from? I didn't realize it was automatically doing it, but you will not need to add the bridge it creates. It will automatically add it for you. And if we go over here to IP address, we can see right here. Oh, you know what? We got to start it first. Hold on. So let's go ahead before we cover that. I forgot we need to start it first. So let's go ahead and go over. Actually, we'll go over one more thing, then we'll go ahead and do that. So there is another command that you can use. Is there's net define and there's net create. So the difference is that with net create, it's going to create a temporary network from an XML file and start the network. It is not persistent, and then define is it's going to define an inactive persistent network or make an existing persistent one from an XML file. Basically, make a persistent network. So if you want to make the network persistent, use net define. If you want a quick just tear down network, then use net create. So whatever is going to work best for your purposes. Now going in and starting the network. So let's go ahead and just do, it's pretty similar to other commands we've run. Verse start another network. All right, perfect. And then let's go ahead and we'll just set it to auto start as well. Oops. Set as auto start. Now let's go ahead and run the IP address again. There we go. See, now we can see that interface right here. See, prior to that, it wasn't there, but then once we actually started it up, it's now registering here. It's got our default gateway IP address here because that's going to be the actual place that it goes, and then it's going to run through the actual NIC on the machine out to the internet and come back. Our host machine is essentially acting like a switch between the host machine, the virtual machines and the internet. So that's what's happening here. So, okay. So, all right. Now, the other command that I want to show you here is how to stop a network. You're going to do verse net and then our favorite destroy and then another network. Oops. All right, perfect. And then we'll just do a verse net list tac all. And we can see that that is there. Right now it is inactive, but it is persistent and it will auto start on the next reboot. So now again, to go over this again here, or to go over this a little bit more for our particular network here, let's just do a verse net edit, and then we'll do another. Again, this is how you can adjust it. Pretty simple. It's a lot easier. I shouldn't say it's a lot easier doing this than the virtual machine configuration file, but there's just a lot less information here, so it can be a lot easier to parse through than looking at a VM XML file. So, All right, and now the way that you're going to go about deleting, actually, let's cover something different. So if you want to change the VM's network assignment, that's going to be done a little bit differently. Now that's going to be in the versh. What we're going to do, actually, let me show you the XML file, and then we'll talk more about the command. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a versh. We're going to dump XML, XML, and then we're going to do just peppermint test. All right, and then we're going to run that through less. And the reason that we're going to run this through less is because it's a lot of output. So, and we're looking for a very specific section. So when you want to make changes to the network assignment, you'll have to go here and look for the section with the interface. And here we go. We've got it right here. All right, so you can do one of two things. Right now, this one is actually working off of the default network. So what we could do is we could actually go into there. Let's quit out of this. Let's go to versh edit. We'll do peppermint test. All right, and let's scroll down, looking for interface again. Let's keep scrolling. There we go. We've got our interface here. I'm going to just take it all the way up to the top just so it's a little bit easier. Is you can do one of two things. So right now we're using VIR BR0, which is the default network. You could just easily go in here. Change that to a 1. Now, the other thing that you could do is you could go in here and you could change this right here to, instead of source bridge, you change it to source network. All right, and then change this to another network. All right, and then you would go ahead and just save the file. We're not going to save this just because I'm going to leave it at the default. I'm not going to make any changes, but that's how you would actually make the changes. So let me go ahead and get out of here. No. Let me just make sure that I didn't screw that up. I think I might have thrown a W in there. A little too far. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's right where it needs to be. All right, now if you ever make any updates to the actual net configuration file, the network configuration file, is you'll need to make sure that you also run a net update, because that'll go ahead and just basically, it's like doing a refresh of that particular network, and it'll make those changes. We haven't made any changes, so we don't need to run that here, but I wanted to go ahead and show that. It would just be like that. So pretty easy peasy. Now let's go ahead and talk about deleting a network. As you would do versh net undefine, and then you would do the another network. Perfect. And let me see, I can't remember if it gets rid of the, I will just cd over there, libvirt, and then we're going to do qemu net. Okay, cool. So you'll have to make sure to delete the, I can't remember if there's an option to. It's been a little while, so let me just do a, because we can still see it there. What we'll do is we'll just, since it's here, since we're here, is you can always just remove the file yourself. Now let's see here. Let's do versh. Let's just do a man on versh, and then we can do undefined. Let's be more specific because there is more than one command. All right, yeah. So it looks like you'll have to go in there and manually delete the XML file once you actually do the undefined. So, just one additional step that you want to make sure that you do to go ahead and make sure that you get all the house cleaning done when it comes to that network. All right, so that's pretty much all I had to cover, as far as getting into networks and stuff like that. Pretty easy peasy when you're running it from the command line. So if there's any other networking questions, that you have in regards to KVM, please definitely leave me a comment down below, and I'd be happy to go ahead and see if I can get back to you or cover that information in a future video. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know what you liked down below. Give it a thumbs down if you did not like it, and let me know what I could be doing better down below. Let me know if there's any other content that you'd like to see or have any requests. I'm definitely open to suggestions. And then make sure you hit the bell button as well, because that'll notify you when new videos are uploaded down below. Make sure you subscribe so that you get all the future content coming from me in this series, as well as other Linux style content. All right, well, I really appreciate you watching my video, and have the greatest of days.